welcome back to the Winterfest 2021. And today we have two very special guests. We have Tracy Butler and we have India Swift. And we're gonna talk about making cakes. That is not true. No.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about comics and animation because Tracy has been doing a comic for several years and recently jumped into animation production. And on the other side, we have India, who's been working in animation forever and is also a very talented comic artist. So it's going to be great to have both point of views and experience on the matter, because everybody who does comics wants to make them move and everybody who makes animation wants to make comics. Like, let's be honest.
It's true.
There's a lot of overlap, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not the same. And so it's going to be a fun discussion. So how about you lovely people introduce yourself? Yay!
Oh, who first? I'm Tracy Butler. I draw a comic called Lackadaisy. I came from a background in the game industry where I did 3D animation, but that really wasn't my main passion. And I started doing comics in my free time, and it became my job. And then I started wanting to do 2D animation. So here I am working on an animation project with a crew. Hello.
How about you, India?
I am India Swift. I have been in animation for a little bit, and I took a break from it because I really wanted to make my own comic. So I've been trying to do that at the same time, and learning that has been a curve and a ton of fun at the same time. So yeah, hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. What is the name of your comic that is coming out?
Yeah, it's about a girl who starts a new school in a new town, and she's finding it hard to fit in. And then on top of everything, there are some supernatural goings on, and monsters enter the story. And as the only one who can see them, she has to kind of figure out a way to save the town. And at the same time, she's still trying to make friends. So things are difficult, but hopefully it's going to be kind of a fun action adventure, monster of the week type extravaganza. So I hope it'll be fun to read. It was a lot of fun to make.
It sounds fun.
Yeah.
It sounds like it has some horror elements, which I love, so that's very cool.
It's very well drawn, cute horror, as far as I've seen.
Yeah, it's cute, and then it's scary, and then it's cute again.
Good combination.
How about you, Tracy? What is your comic about? Aside from booze and cats.
Yeah, Lackadaisy, also known as Booze Cats. It's a comic about some shady characters trying to run a speakeasy in the 1920s, and they are cats for some reason. It seemed like a natural fit. I don't know, gangsters and cats.
But they herd chickens.
Yeah. And then so I've been working on that for many years, and decided to start an animation project about it. So we kickstarted that in 2020, and we've been working on a film since then with director Fable Siegel, who's a animation veteran, has worked in various studios all over LA, and has also experience in comics themselves. And yeah, so we put a team together, and we've been animating like crazy. So
and it's looking incredible too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're trying our best. We're doing absolutely the best we can with the budget and the time we have, and we're excited about it. So yeah, it'll be out for free on YouTube when it's done in 2022.
That's so exciting.
I really need to know, what is your favorite holiday tradition?
I tend not to do much, but hunker down and try to stay warm and do art.
That counts.
My favorite holiday is spooky season, so I like to do I use it as an excuse to do some thematic artwork to dress my characters up.
I hope you had a good one this year.
Yeah, we watched a few horror films on the work server. We just streamed them while we were working, and that was a lot of fun. So.
I know, I stayed away.
Sorry.
I would see them and be like, no.
What's your favorite spooky movie?
Oh, hard to say. Gosh, there's so many. If I was going to say a serious horror film, I'd maybe say Hereditary. A24 has been putting out some really amazingly creepy and unusual things, but I think probably in terms of fun, Evil Dead 2 is probably my favorite. So
Nice. That comedy horror.
yes, they go so well together.
I was laughing because I'm the same with the
Oh, really?
holiday time traditions. Just in terms of like, to me, the best thing about cold weather is getting to just like snuggle down and
Yeah,
stay warm inside while it's like cold and dark outside.
exactly. Yes,
Such a nice
No
feeling.
way.
I think
And then
I'd
you
get
can
more
make-
productive. Yeah, in the
Yeah,
winter months.
exactly. Just blankets and hot drinks all the time.
Yep.
I'm outside
and
all
my
the
sit cheek to
time.
keep me warm. Oh yeah, you do a lot of outdoor stuff, huh?
Yes. I wait for winter all year long, and then when it's winter, I'm super happy.
Aw. Do you go
What do you
skiing
do?
or?
Yeah.
I do snowboarding, but I'm not really good at it. I just do it. I'm not proficient in it. But I have a sled dog, so I just go everywhere with my
Oh.
Mm.
dog.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And can you share one amazing positive event that occurred this year for you two?
Well, I've been working on it since last year, but I got to start making an animation of my my long-running comic project, and that's been
Ooh.
like a lifelong dream to work on an animated film. So, dream realized, at least in part, until we finish the film. But
That's so
It's been-
awesome.
yeah, I feel very lucky.
When was it that you were like, it's time?
Around the end of 2019, early 2020, I was like, well, I'd been thinking about it a long time before then, but it just didn't really seem like I had the resources or things available. But it started becoming clear to me that like virtual studios were possible, and there were animators out there looking to participate in something, and maybe I could crowdfund something. And the pieces just kind of fell together. I contacted Fable, and then we found Spike, and Spike knows how to run Kickstarters. So we were like, oh, this is actually possible. So yeah, it was
So cool.
kind of just stumbled our way toward it. But a lot of like serendipitous things happened and lined up, so we were able to make it happen. And that
cool.
kind of, yeah, we did our Kickstarter like right as COVID was setting in, so it's a little
Oh.
scary, but but it gave us something to focus on, like through the past, like, you know, strange times, interesting times that we live in. It's been nice to have like an art project to dig our teeth into and like really focus on instead of all of the, you know, troubles in the world. So
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
How about you, India?
For me, it's kind of the opposite, actually, which is kind of funny. I've just finished inking my first comic book, so
Oh, congratulations.
yeah, like literally yesterday or something.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
Okay,
yesterday
wow,
you
that's-
announced it. Oh my god.
Yeah, I just finished the inks, so it's being printed by IDW next year, and I'm very nervous about it, but also happy that I got to make it.
That's amazing. So what prompted you to start doing that instead of I guess animation was your
Yeah, I'm actually doing it alongside animation because, like all artists, I'm
right? Yeah,
I'm a
still
little
like
bonkers.
still making comics too, so
Yeah,
can't let
exactly.
it go.
Of course not. What? No,
Yeah.
I'd never stop doing something. I'd just take more things on.
Right, exactly. Less
Yeah.
sleep, more art.
So yeah, it started as a passion project, and I was just kind of doing it on my own time, just doing it for fun, really, and self-printing it and self-publishing it and taking it to festivals and stuff. And then we moved in with my friend Declan Shelby, who's a comic book artist, and he encouraged me to send it into IDW. And I was like, oh, they won't want it. Oh, I guess I'll do it just in case, but you know, nothing's going to come of it. And then they were like, yeah, we'll pick this up.
This is so
that's
nice.
fabulous.
I remember you were so happy when that happened.
That is
Yeah.
that is very
so great.
validating. That's very cool.
Yeah, it was super. It was immediately like, what have I done? But the first 10 minutes were super nice.
Yeah, the first
It'd
few minutes
be
before the
like
reality of like all the work and stress. Yeah,
Yeah,
sets in.
I never
At least you
thought
get to
about-
enjoy it.
Yeah. I'm
I
still
get-
very happy though and thankful that I get to do it.
I get the same thing for the Game Grumps animated. They're like, yeah, we want you to make 3 next year. I'm like, oh, that's great. And then I realize that I have to animate that I made 3 minutes next year. I'm like,
Oh,
fuck.
that's a lot. Yeah.
But it's great in the 10 first minutes, and then you realize you actually have to do stuff. You're like, oh.
Yep.
I'm
It's
glad
like
I'm
that
not
with
the
the
only
film
one.
too. It's like, oh yeah, we have all this funding. Now we have to make like a movie that people actually like and enjoy.
I felt
it.
so ungrateful, but I'm glad that everybody's the same actually. Great.
Yeah.
It's just like with the opportunity comes like a huge amount of pressure as well to like
Responsibility.
make the most of it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
With great power comes great
Thank you, Spider-Man. Uncle Ben. All right. Okay, so for art questions, this is one that I asked for everyone who comes on Winterfest this year. Do you notice a change in your drawing ability depending on how you hold your pencil?
Interesting.
I notice a difference between how I hold my stylus and how I hold my pencil because I hurt myself more often with my stylus on a tablet.
Oh no.
Yeah, I end up with like epicondylitis. Like my elbow's been bothering me for the past couple of years, like on and off, and it's usually seems to be associated with doing lots of digital
Oh no.
like stuff. Yeah, but my pencil, like my pencil drawing, is like my refuge where I can just draw with a pencil all day long and not hurt at all. I think I just grip my stylus much more tightly for some reason. It might be like the tactile thing of the plastic material sliding around on the surface of the tablet that makes it somehow like feel like I need to like crunch down on it or something with my fingers. But other than that, yeah, I don't know. I maybe need a one of those like those holder things that go around your stylus pen that make it so that it's thicker.
Oh.
So I don't do that, but I haven't bought one yet.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
For me, I tend to hold my pencil and my stylus the same, which is to say, probably not very well. I have like a big dent in my middle finger from holding.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have calluses too. Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't really change like that. I have noticed that I tend to rotate my stylus to use the eraser on the end. My partner thinks I'm bonkers for doing it because he uses a keyboard shortcut instead. It's like, but it feels like a pencil when I do it that way. It's like,
I know, right? I do the same. I feel you.
yeah.
And people are
It's a
like, it's
feeling
useless. You
thing.
can use the R short. I'm like, no, I don't want to use the E shortcut. I want to flip my pencil.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's the difference between like, I don't know, having a lot of drawing with pencils first and then moving into digital versus just starting on digital.
Maybe.
Could be, yeah. I tend to use a kneaded eraser when I draw on pencil. I don't rely on I guess I don't trust the erasers on the end of my pencils so well because they have so often smudged and left like
no.
dark marks that I can't get rid of. But that's like the result of using cheap pencils that aren't great probably. But I like my kneaded erasers, but my cats steal them all the time. So.
I know, right? Okay, I thought I was the only one. I have to keep them
find
in
them under
little
the couch
pill
all the
bottles.
yeah.
I want to learn to draw.
Yeah, you know the little
Yeah.
bottle to keep like medicine away from children? I have to put my kneaded eraser in that, otherwise it gets stolen.
That's hilarious.
Oh, Tracy, do you still draw your comic in pencil? Because I know that, because I used to read your comic all the time when I was in college because I was so inspired by it. I used to just pore over the pages and be like, these drawings.
Oh,
And you had like a how I do it thing up
Yeah.
where you were saying that you draw all your pages in pencil first.
Yeah, I do pencil all the panels first.
Oh.
But I do like early on in the comic most of what I was posting was like just straight pencil with some sepia toning that I added in Photoshop, but now I do a
Yeah.
lot more digital work on top of the pencil art. So the pencil art doesn't really shine through the way it used to. Because I almost like I color and texture everything a lot more and tone everything a lot more these days. But yeah, I still start in pencil every time. I just feel more comfortable
But now
drawing
that
that
you-
way.
Now that you mention it, that's something that I really love about like comics in general, and some people don't sometimes. But like seeing the comic evolve, especially comics that goes on for years and years. Like
Yeah.
the last issue is not always the same as the first one, and that's great.
Yeah,
like, you
I
just
think-
change style and you evolve and.
Yeah, I think you can't like stifle yourself from evolving as an artist and learning new things and stuff when you do a comic for a long period of time. I think it would be a shame if it looked the same. Like
Yeah.
that would just be so stagnant. If like for over a number of years you were just staying exactly as it looked before. Even like very popular syndicated comics, like I loved Calvin and Hobbes growing up, and like you can see the early books, like it looks quite a bit different from the later books. You can see the style progress over time, and yeah, I feel like I don't think that's wrong. I think it's just natural for an artist to grow like that, and it's kind of an interesting thing to see. But people ask me all the time, like, oh, do you feel bad about how like your comic looks different now? I'm like, not really. I mean, I think it got better.
Yeah,
I hope it
looks
did.
incredible. Like it's
Yeah.
incredibly cinematic now. What with
Yes.
you've got like
Yeah, I
all the
learned so
lighting.
much. I didn't know what I was doing at all when I first started. I still don't know what I'm doing, but a little less than before. So.
That's one of the inspiring things to me, I think, about comics though, is that you can see the art change over time. Because to me it would be like way too much pressure if I
Yeah.
felt like I had to draw everything the best I possibly could
Yeah, but
from
you
the
do see
beginning.
you do see the same in animation a little bit too. Not necessarily coming from like if a team does like a short film or something, it should look consistent throughout. I would say, but like things like I can think of like Steven Universe. Like I saw people complain that like different episodes look slightly different in terms of like animation style and even character models. But I kind of think that's neat because it's just like you're seeing the different artists' input into like and their interpretation, and it's like that's what art is. Like
I think it's neat too, and that's something that you can't erase. Like no matter how good someone is, if you know that person's art well enough, you're always going to be able to look at the film and see which shots which people did.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the things animators honestly like that irritates us the most is when people are like, oh, it doesn't look the same. Like it's not meant to. It looks
Right.
great. It's nice to have that print of other artists on it.
Yeah.
And also
Exactly.
it happens in every production. It's like a running joke where whenever me and a team finish anything, we always feel like we've just got the hang of drawing the characters in like the last shot.
I know.
It's like, oh. Now I can't draw them anymore, but I feel like it's the first time I've actually managed to draw them properly.
And now we're done.
Yep, it's over.
So speaking of long projects and learning and stuff, what are some of the most useful tips you've received from peers and or friends or mentors?
Probably the advice I have gotten about stopping that thing where you try desperately to translate exactly what was in your head onto paper, and kind of like going with what you come up with instead. I think a lot of artists get hung up on like, oh, I have to, if I'm not like perfectly translating my imagination onto like into animation or into a comic or into a drawing, then it isn't right, and it's like the wrong thing, or like I can't like, it's like that frustration of not being able to translate perfectly. But it's like sometimes you just come up with something better if you're not trying to like exactly replicate what you saw in your mind's eye.
Trust your line, trust your wrist.
Yeah,
Your
like I
elbow.
remember I would get so frustrated. I'd erase holes in paper all the time because I'd like just be constantly like trying to redraw the same thing, trying to get it right, like what I saw in my head. And I think you kind of have to let that go and just trust your artistic instincts instead of chasing after that, like, imaginary thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, I definitely notice that when I'm trying to do that, I tense up way more.
Yeah.
I lose the looseness.
Oh,
Yeah, and sometimes I'm like, I'm just like throwing away ideas that are actually maybe better than what I originally thought of, but it's all in the like that effort to be like, no, it has to be what I imagined.
That is one thing though that I like with digital art is that because I know drawing on paper has some advantage and computers as well, like both of them I think are needed, but in computer the great thing is that you can draw. If you're not satisfied, you hide the layers, you make another one and you try again. But you still have the the backup of what you did. Like you didn't erase it. Like it's not gone. It's still there.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
can
that's
kind
one
of
of the
evolve.
absolute advantages of digital media. But then there's also that like tendency to poke at something maybe too long as well. Like I find I zoom in too close.
Yeah, I was gonna say zooming in is one of the curses.
Yeah, sometimes it's like if I'm drawing a pencil, I do less of that. I stress out less about like every little detail and everything. It's like Pencil's supposed to be a little bit loose and messy most of the time, so.
But for comics too, like sometimes when you ink it and you want to color it, like you're zooming in 8,000%. And you're like, I have to fill the gap, and then you print it and nobody cared.
Yep.
You're like,
no one would have seen that little tiny, like, yeah.
So true. It takes you so much longer to do things when you're zoomed into.
Yep.
One of the things that showed me go so much faster as an artist was just like, I'm not going to zoom past a certain level. I'm just gonna
Yeah,
draw.
you almost like have to force yourself to do that. I think like when I started working digitally, I was losing sight of the bigger picture by zooming too closely in. You have to pull back and look at like the thing as a whole to really get your composition and staging and everything right. And if you zoom in, you end up doing that thing where like you draw like a head and you might be really happy with it, but then you like start drawing the body and it's not the right size, and you just like adjust everything.
You zoom out and you're like, oh no!
Yeah, it's like, oh no, this is so lopsided, or it's so disproportionate, and yeah, it's
Oh man.
something you have to like relearn as a digital artist to like zoom out.
Yeah. In terms of advice and stuff, one thing which always stuck with me is I met Michael Korinsky at an animation festival one year. He's like a viz dev artist on stuff like Spider-Verse and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And he was talking about how his mantra is always be ready. And in terms of like how he applies that to his life, he just tries to take care of himself and his body and like his mental state, so that when an opportunity comes along, he's prepared to take it and doesn't like self-sabotage himself into like not going for something.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. That thing that artists are bad at taking care of themselves overall. I think we all overdo it and overwork ourselves and get into a bad place where sometimes you spiral and then you just treat yourself even worse because you're like, oh, I haven't been productive enough. So then you like, you buckle down and double down and stay up too late and don't eat and don't drink water, sit in a bad position and injure yourself. And and it's like you tend to produce, you be more productive and be more happy and do better work, I think, when you are in a good state of mind and healthy and well fed and well rested.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a lot of young artists as well where they think that the job is going to make them ready rather than them having to take responsibility for like their art and their health before the job comes along.
Oh, that is so true.
Yeah. It's like people will offer you the job because they can see that you are there. So just focus on like taking care of yourself and being kind to yourself, and there's no guarantee that this job is going to suddenly make you able to do this stuff. So you've got to kind of learn it yourself.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of that need to be like a self-starter, self-motivated, and that, and like in regards to learning. I know a lot of people have gone to like through art school programs and feel like they didn't really pick up a lot. It's largely because like the onus to actually learn things is on you. Like you might be provided with the tools and some teachers and things you can fall back on for advice and feedback and things, but ultimately it's like it's up to you to really do the learning part by doing the thing.
Yeah, and that's awesome because it means like kind of your destiny is in your hands. You're not kind of at the
Exactly.
whims of what the world is doing.
It's the empowerment, but also the terror of being in full control of the situation.
Like making mistakes is part of the artist's journey. And this is one question I really love to ask. Is there some mistakes that you've made that you've learned from the past, like from them in the past?
Oh, I've made so many mistakes.
Yeah, we all did.
I think like learning to pace myself and have a realistic idea about how much work I can actually get done in a given amount of time. I still struggle with that. I still like overestimate, and then I punish myself, just like I was talking about before, where like artists need to take care of themselves. Like you get into that state of mind where like, oh, I didn't get everything done today that I thought I could, and so therefore I'm going to stay up extra late and try to get enough done that I can feel okay about. I don't have to feel guilty going to sleep, which is just a very bad habit to be in. But one of the benefits I find of working when I work by myself, like it gets very bad, and that's how I do the comic. It's like a completely solo project. But then if I'm like, but now working on the animated film, we have a team of people, and we are on the work server together. And it's like people will yell at each other to go to bed and like take care of themselves and like take a break, take a nap, eat something. It's actually been very very good. I think that everybody like kind of cares about each other, and it's nice to have a reminder. It's almost like sometimes you need the outside permission from somebody to like go and do some self-care. So yeah. But yeah, one of my ongoing mistakes has been miscalculating what I can do, and then like just making things worse for myself because I can never reach that like actual bar. Like if you set the bar for your absolute best, most productive day, you will on most days never reach that. So you almost have to like set the bar for like a moderately productive day or even a bad day, and then when you exceed that amount, you then get to feel good about yourself instead of feeling like you're constantly behind. If that makes sense. Like I think you need to just like people need, I think, more realistic assessments of how much work they can get done at any given point.
Yeah, that's so true. Just expecting yourself to be able to get so much done, they're getting angry at yourself that you didn't manage to do it somehow.
Yes, and then it leads to being angry at yourself all the time, which is just
not great. Yeah,
No.
I'm really happy that people in the server are like aggressively taking care of one another.
Yes, yeah. We even have like special emojis we use to like tell each other to like go to bed.
That's awesome. Oh man, my mistakes. I think I have so many mistakes that I've made. Another one which kind of still plagues me sometimes, but I think is super important for people to learn, and it's something that I think people maybe overlook a lot, is just when you're working in a team to be really communicative and tell people that you need help if you need help, rather than being upset that you aren't living up to what you want and then running away. Mm-hmm. And not telling them that there's a problem and hoping it'll just fix itself by the time the deadline comes around.
Yep.
Yeah, people would really rather hear, hey, can I take an extra week on this because I'm not getting through it as fast as I thought I was going to, than you just going silent and then not delivering the work, or like telling them on the day of, or just not telling them at all and disappearing in shame.
God. Yep. This is something we try to like really like drill home for like the artists on our crew, because we have a lot of young artists. Some of them are still in school.
Communicate is so important.
Communication is the thing. It's like we are like the thing that throws us off really badly is if somebody takes on an assignment and then like disappears for a long time and doesn't say anything, and then if they come back with work done but it's not done right, then that's a problem. And if they come back or they don't come back at all, that like throws our scheduling off really badly. But what we would appreciate way more is like the communication. Like if you just need more time or you need help with something, we're absolutely happy to help you out with that. Like it's really like the breakdown of communication that throws things into chaos in terms of like scheduling. Because if we have to reassign something, we'll reassign it. We're not going to be mad at you about it. It's totally fine. But yeah, it's hard to get artists on like to sometimes like realize that like, no, just talk to people. It's fine. Like people will be understanding.
So important.
Yeah,
it's a great point as well about the notes. Just keeping people up to date with what you're doing. So if there's a problem, they can just tell you like in the first week. It doesn't need to be the day before the deadline to find out.
Right. It's like it's fine to show work that's incomplete. Like work in progress. It doesn't have to be super polished and complete for you to like get feedback on it. You can like we love it when we see like we actually want people to give us like messy keys at first, and so that we can like make sure we have everything like we're on the same page in terms of what we're trying to make here, before you put a bunch of work into it and then have to like throw it all away
and be angry that you're throwing it away, but
exactly.
like it's your fault that you didn't share it first.
Right. And then be dejected. It's just like working in illustration or something too. If you have a client and you like you fully draw out the entire picture that they want without like showing them thumbnails or progress sketches or something, you may very well end up in a situation where you've spent like hours or days on something and it's not the right thing. So you gotta Yeah.
You've triggered a memory for me. Like when I was first starting out, way back when it was like, your mum's friend would ask you to draw a portrait of their family.
Yeah.
I got a lady asking me to draw a portrait of her family, and I drew it, and I missed one of the kids out completely by accident. Because in the photo, I thought they were the same kid because she sent me them in different pictures, and they looked really similar. So I was like, oh yeah, 2 photos of the same kid from different angles, and then the mum, yeah, got you, no problem. Oh, that was awkward.
No. Yeah. But yeah, speaking of mistakes, yeah, that's definitely the kind of thing I've done before too, where you don't want to show somebody your messy progress shots, and so you're like, oh, I'll just show them the final artwork, and then it's the wrong thing. And
Yeah, I've got way better at it, but there's still always the instinct there of like just wanting to only show someone the finished thing and like completely wow them, but it's way too much hassle to do.
Yep. Yeah, you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot doing that if, especially if you're working on a team like with a big project, and there's lots of different like, intermingling needs and requirements for like.
And it's all things that you sometimes don't expect either, so it just happens.
Exactly.
And you're like, fuck.
Yeah, so just communicate. Like your team will appreciate it so much more if you just tell them there's an issue than if you disappear and don't communicate and like hide because you feel like, I don't know, upset or ashamed that you didn't get your shot done, or you stumbled along the way or something went wrong. Like, yeah.
Like, didn't you say, Z, that the reason the Game Grumps reached out to you and Renee was because you guys were so communicative?
It is one of the reasons, yeah. And that maybe like is a lesson for people listening. Even if it's a fun project, like for example the Game Grumps thing that I do with Renee, it's still a job. Like you have to deliver something. So if you cannot deliver that something, it's fine. But just be communicative. Because some people just don't say anything. And one day I just missed the deadline completely. The deadline was supposed to be October 1. And I was like, that's Monday, October 1. It was actually a Friday, but in my head, I made my schedule. Because I have like 3 jobs plus that at the same time. I was like, okay, I'll have the weekend to finish it. And then I was like, oh, Friday, October 1. Oh, no. So I wrote them a message. I'm like, hey, I completely missed out. I thought it was on Friday, but it's on Monday. Like, can we arrange something? They're like, oh, yeah, sure. You can just hand it off on Monday. And anyway, it's the weekend. We don't work. I'm like, okay. And
yeah, you'll often find people are like just happy to hear an update of some kind.
Exactly,
so, like,
right? Sometimes the deadline is not as strict as you might think. It's just that people like to have deadlines because it helps being organized. And usually in deadlines, there is a plan that's like, maybe it can overlap like a few hours or a few days. Like, don't kill yourself for a job if you didn't ask for it first. Because sometimes the deadline cannot move and this happens and then you have to.
That's true. Like, I mean, a manager or a project leader or something might tell you like this is an absolute hard deadline. It's like there's no wiggle room, but most of the time the deadline they give you is a little offset from when they actually desperately need it to be like complete, and because that's just good management is to not let on that the like, give them a deadline, because and the reason for that is because it is so easy to slip and miss a deadline because unforeseen things happen, or there's like a technical issue or whatever. So you set the deadline a little ahead of when you actually really like no questions asked.
And the difference is that we asked for it. Like we said, oh, can we have like a day's more? And then when I asked that, a lot of people were just like, yeah, me too. Oh, I'm not done. I was about to hit it on Monday anyway. And they were like, why didn't you tell us? So like people got a bit that was not super responsible from a lot of people. And communicate, people, because like imagine if you're handling a project and the people you hire, they just don't give you news. Like, I'd rather know that the thing will be late than like just not receive it.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Being reliable is so much more important than being like the best artist.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's people who communicate well and that like give off an aura of maturity and sensibility and being just reliable and a good person to work with. Like, if you're like the greatest artist, but you're like a kind of a nightmare to work with, people aren't going to want to hire you. So
it's true. You might get hired once, but you won't get hired by the same person again.
Exactly. Be a good communicator above all. I think that's really important. So, and don't do that thing to yourself where you get afraid of of approaching like your project leader or something and then convince yourself that you're going to get yelled at or something, and then run away and hide because of that. Yeah, that's awful. That's bad for the project. It's bad for you and your career. It's bad for the team. Like, don't do that, because it's probably not going to be nearly as bad as you think. Telling them like, I missed my deadline, I'm going to need another week or whatever. They'll probably be like, okay.
Yeah. And especially if it's an animation project, because them being late, that's just like, that's the standard.
Yeah.
Yep. Late is generally expected, to some extent. I mean, late is way better than nothing at all. So
yeah, 100%.
What are some misconceptions that artists might have when they jump from one medium to the other, like going from animation to comics or comics to animation? Like, what are some things you didn't expect that would be like either problematic or easy, like just misconceptions, things you missed out on?
I think I was surprised at how little wiggle room there is after you've done your storyboards. Like, I love to when I'm drawing comics, if I've got a scene and I need like the timing doesn't seem right to me, I will just like add another panel or eliminate a panel or like combine a panel into like, or make it like a big long like wider panel so it seems like it feels like more time is elapsed in like the progression of the story or something. But when it comes to animation, like once you've done your storyboards, like and you're like watching the animation roll in and the pieces start to come together and you realize, oh, the timing on this like joke or something is off, there's really not a lot you can do. Like, you can cut things back a little bit, but like adding more time. I did that to Fable at one point, and Fable was not happy with me. I was like, the timing on this facial expression joke, like, we just need more time or it's not funny. And Fable was like, I see what you mean, but it's like, it's such a pain and a problem to actually add more time and tell the animator we need to change this, and then like it doesn't line up with the storyboard quite, or the animatic anymore. It's a real issue. So yeah, I guess I didn't expect it to be quite that inflexible in some ways, but I mean, when I think back on it, it's like, yeah, of course that makes sense, because there's so many things that need to come together and line up properly, and like this animation is going to affect an animation another artist is doing that has to like tie into this one. So yeah, that's tricky. And then of course the voice acting may or may not like accommodate that too, and like all that stuff that you've like pre-recorded and everything.
That's like huge, and it's always tricky. Like, you might do something in the boards, and then when you see more frames added, you're like, oh no, this needs more time.
Right.
You can do.
Like exactly. It's like I guess I just thought of it as, oh well, we'll just adjust timing a little bit if here and there if needed. We tried our best to get it right in the animatic beforehand, of course, but sometimes it's like, at least for me, coming in on like a 2D animated like cinematic film project, I'm just more accustomed to being like a solo artist where I can just have all the flexibility in the world to change things around however I want at any point, like right up until I post a comic. Like it's still something I can edit. But with the animation stuff, yeah, it's like, no, you gotta like set it in stone and then move forward.
Yeah, that makes so much sense as well with the teams versus solo. Like,
yeah.
One of the things I really like about comics is it's actually like doable to tell a complete story in a comic by yourself.
Exactly, yeah.
And for it not to take you like 7 years to do.
Yes, it's a really that is what I love about comics, is like you can just do that by yourself. You can achieve like the epic storytelling as like a one person thing, but like even to tell a very short story with that's fully animated is like, a couple of years for a team to do, So.
Yeah, like me and a team of, I think it was 8 people with Starlight Brigade, that took us 7 months to do, and that was 3.5 minutes or something.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine doing like a 20-minute episode or something.
And most of the shots were in space, so that was a bit less background work as well. Like,
also,
you were smart about it, guys.
That's really cool, because that is an amazing looking piece of animation. And
oh, thank you. Yeah, we learned a lot on that project. I'm very happy that it was in space, because at the time I still wasn't into using grids with my storyboards, and luckily it didn't matter too much because everything was in space anyway. So.
But legit, that's something I tell to my students sometimes. I'm like, if you want to learn animation first, like just dabble in it. Like try to do something either underwater or in space. Like don't have a floor. It's
Things can
everything's so
float
much
and,
easier without a floor.
yeah, perspective drawing is hard, especially
It
with
is.
animation. That's why we had to incorporate 3D in our film, is because we had like all these cars and guns and things and like underground architecture and stuff. And it's like having an animator hand draw all of that and get the perspective right at every frame. That would have been impossible. We would have maybe been able to do like 3 or 4 minutes of animation instead of 20 minutes. So the 3D stuff really came in handy there. But yeah, I definitely see what you mean about space or underwater, where things can be floaty and you don't have to draw perspective lines. And
I stood a short film. I had one in the air, one underwater.
Smart.
Choose your fights, people. And how about when you go from animation to comics? Is there something that you didn't expect?
For me, definitely. In that, I thought it would be way more similar in terms of the skill sets, I think. But there's like a whole slew of new stuff to learn that's exclusive to comics that really affects the storytelling. Like one of the big ones for me was page layouts and panel layouts. Like learning to use the page turn, learning to use panel shapes and panel layouts to like emphasize a story and set the feel and the tone, and to play with that a little bit. That's a whole new thing that we don't get with animation, because generally we're just animating to screen size. So the frame and the setting in which we draw
it's
never
an
really
art
changes.
on its own.
Yeah,
it's so
it's
hard.
huge.
Oh, it definitely is. Page layouts, paneling and everything is its own art form. It's almost a like a graphic design sensibility mixed in with like that cinematic sensibility that you have to have for animation or for comics, but like then to also have the freedom to change like the aspect ratio and everything of every panel, or to size things differently, to emphasize one thing as being more important than another, or to try to imply like the passage of time or something like that, or to it's a whole different thing.
Because that's
like its
something
own
I get.
language.
Oh, go for it.
I was just going to say, like, when I first started, it was honestly very overwhelming, because it really felt like there were so many possibilities and so many like right answers that would have slightly different effects.
Yeah, there is. It is. It's like open with like just all decision making, whether like what your panel layout looks like, what your page overall looks like, the pace at which you reveal things, the pace at which a conversation happens, and the other aspects of it too, like your lettering and your bubble shapes, and like how you treat all of that stuff. It's just like there's just a never ending series of things you have to decide, and it is hard to know even where to start. But I also find that it's really challenging, and you never get bored doing it, because there's just so many things to learn. It's like, there's like always something to narrow in on. If you don't feel like doing like actual penciling or inking or like color flats or something, you can always just like mess around with your panel layouts and thumbnails, or work on your lettering and speech bubbles, and work on your writing and things. So
Because one thing I get from my students is that they say, "Oh, I'll try to do comic because I don't have any sense of timing and it's going to be easier." I'm like, "Well,
Oh, no.
like there's timing in comics as well. Like the pages, the way that you read, like how much time you spend on a certain subject versus like I think I'm not a comic artist in any way, but I think there's timing in comics as well. Like it's
absolutely, yes. Like the story beats and the like
beats.
the
That's the word I was
individual.
looking for. Thank
Yeah, it's not quite the exact same thing as storyboards, because that's a very steady beat that you need to communicate to animators, right? But with comics, you're communicating directly to the reader, like how passage of time here. Because it's determined by the way they read the page, and not by just the way the FP is in front of you, and like with a film. And so it tends to be like you find that kind of naturally people will interpret narrow panels as like shorter periods of time or something that happens quickly. Whereas like larger panels, like establishing shots, are like a quieter big scene that like just establishes setting
and this
then,
panels
long...
with more details is gonna take you more time to decipher.
Exactly. Yeah.
So...
If you have to pore over a bunch of detail, it's something that takes longer. And so if you're like at the same time like interpreting what the imagery is telling you or reading a conversation, it feels like it happens over a longer period of time. So yeah, it's interesting, the difference there.
Yeah, like storytelling pacing is like equally important in both and done slightly differently in both. You don't get to escape it by doing comics.
Exactly, yes. It's very much a part of comics, yeah.
What are some skills that overlap when going from animation to comic, and what are some skills that overlap when you go from comics to animation?
Yeah, I think certain aspects of, say, like character acting, or your sense of like how to communicate, like all the expressions and gestures and things, like really carry over very well. We had to redesign the characters from Lackadaisy for animation purposes because I like way over render them in the comic. Like you can see little individual strands of fur and stuff like that. It's all very like kind of like I go with like a fairly organic looking lighting at this point in time, but like we're going more cell shaded and like almost Xerox era Disney with like the look of the animated film, and so we really just didn't have the like ability to do something that that looks the same as the comic, and I don't think we would want to anyway. It'd just be kind of like graphically overwhelming, I think, to try to do that. But yeah, we don't have a budget the size that like Klaus had or something. So so yeah, we had to like redesign everything. But then I find that like when I'm giving notes to animators and things about character acting and expressions and stuff, I'm really just pulling from my sensibilities from drawing the comic. So that overlaps quite a bit, I feel.
I'd agree. Like I'd say strong drawing ability in terms of the expressions and the poses is something that, unless you're doing something which is really abstract, something that you probably need in both.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that transfers over really well. So, learning to draw,
Yes,
just learning to draw anatomy and stuff in general and seeing like how to compose images, that's gonna be equally important, I think.
yeah, like things like line of action and all that still like will pertain in animation as much as they do in like, or even more so in animation as they do in like comic drawing and everything. Like the way you communicate a character is like moving in a certain way or what have you. It's like, yeah, you're really just like taking that same principle and making it a still frame in a comic, but whereas it's actually moving in real time in animation. So yeah, all of those like drawing 101 things like line of action and that sort of thing are apply across the board.
Yeah, like
I
the
feel.
foundations
Yeah.
are always so important.
Yes. No matter what kind of artist you are like intending to be, those basic things will serve you well if you
Yeah.
Lots of comic artists do paneling and answer questions, and that's really great. And people that want to start out ask questions, and one of the questions is always like, "Do you have an advice to give me?" And like, I think it's a bit hard to just give general advice just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that makes it hard is that, for example, like somebody who made a comic like 20 years ago, the reality of today is not the same.
That's
So,
true.
Yeah, I was about to ask like specifically like for Tracy, like how did things change since when you like began your comic and today?
Yeah, so I began doing webcomics at a time when nobody took webcomics seriously at all. Like it was like a kind of a joke, like that anyone would. I mean, people read them and kind of there was like a lot of hate for them. Like there were whole forums and blogs dedicated to like tearing apart
What?
like webcomics and
I
yeah,
must
so
have been
like
busy playing outside. I've never seen that. This is awful.
yeah. There was something awful which would like tear people to shreds. They had a really, really popular message board and then like community, and then they had like there was like a blog for a time that was like, your webcomic is bad and you should feel bad, and they would just like tear. There was a lot of webcomic hate, because it was just like it was viewed as an invalid, like, or illegitimate sort of like form of making comics. Like, if you couldn't get published, you go put your comic on the web, right? So I didn't know anything about comics when I started. I just like started making my comic because I wanted to tell a story, and kind of just like discovered along the way like what the attitude was about webcomics. I didn't really have any plans to publish it or anything at the time. I just wanted to put it online and be like, share it with people who might be interested in it. And then it started becoming more legitimate because like just more people started making comics on the web, and it started like being a thing where you could win awards and get recognition, and publishers were starting to like notice and reach out to webcomic artists. So instead of you submitting your comic for publication, like they would come to you and be like, hey, we'd like to make a book of this. So yeah, it kind of like gradually found its footing. I think that probably had a lot to do with like the popularity of reading things in a mobile format. Like when I started, there were no smartphones or anything, so nobody read their comics on a phone. But now you've got things like Webtoon and everything that are like enormously popular. And like, studios are going there and optioning comics for like, film production and stuff. And so it definitely went from being like illegitimate joke to being like, hey, yeah, this is like a booming industry now. And it's like, it's almost, I don't know, at some point I think it might overtake like publication comics, as like maybe it even has, I don't know, as a
like indie animation.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it was also like the internet was a different place, and in some ways it was easier to build an audience back at that time. Like in the like I started my comic in 2006, and I only really started like posting it online in about 2007. But that was like DeviantArt was the place for any artist to be. So you just put your stuff on DeviantArt, and people, like, if it was quality material, people would notice it. But now like social media for artists is all over the place. It's like it's on Instagram, it's on Twitter and Tumblr and ArtStation and YouTube and like everywhere. And it's really hard to like find a foothold in any one of those places, because you really have to play that numbers game where you're like paying attention to analytics and trying to drive engagement and things like that. And I think the people who are really successful are the ones who are good at like self-promotion and who understand how the social media like game works. And I feel like a little bit lost in that way. Like I feel like the only reason I still have an audience is because I had one before, and they've followed me around as I've moved to different social media, because you kind of had to. But I think if I came into it now, I would be kind of lost. I wouldn't quite know where to like establish myself. But so yeah, it is a different game, and I don't know that like advice I could give anybody about audience building or something like that would be especially pertinent right now. Like we're struggling to build an audience on YouTube so that when we release our animated film,
talk about it.
Yeah, we'll have a place to we'll have a place for it to land and have an audience ready to watch it, so that it gets some engagement and hopefully gets some numbers. Like it gets it in front of the eyes of some an audience. But that is very hard. It's like kind of inscrutable trying to figure out like how YouTube works and how the algorithm works and how it's going to treat you. It's like a dark art I do not understand.
Let me know if you want to figure it out.
Oh yeah, I know. I wish I had the magic and understanding of, but it's tricky out there. So yeah, I feel a little ill-equipped to like give advice to early artists. Like definitely put your work out there, get to know other artists, like find a community and like interact with people, because that's how you find out about jobs and opportunities, and that's how you learn from other people and everything. But in terms of like where to go with social media and exactly how to use it, it's different for every corner of the internet now.
Yeah,
so
I think the takeaway for this for what you were saying, Tracy, is that when you listen to like interviews and things like that, like always consider when the artist started, because giving advice, because I mean Tracy, you're amazing, so you know that. But I've talked to a lot of people like, I don't know why people are not successful today. But when I started, it
it's so
worked. I'm like,
different.
ugh.
Yeah, it's like boomers telling you to go hit the pavement and and drop off your resume here and there, and it's like doesn't work that way anymore. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They won't let you in. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you wait for 3 days outside Disney Studios now, they will just have you taken away by the police.
I know, you're
They
going
won't
to-
be harmed by it.
Oh my god, that's true.
Yep.
Oh my god. Yeah, but how about you, India, for your comic? Because you've had it online before, but you also have the deal now. So it's a very interesting path. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think with me, it was just like when I sent the book to IDW, I already basically had a book. So it was kind of easy for them to say yes to me almost. Hopefully also it was because it was a cool book. But
It is pretty
No doubt.
darn amazing.
it's all right. But I just did it off the back of a passion project. But in terms of webcomics, I guess I was always a little bit scared to try something like that. But I think one of the things that Tracy maybe didn't mention is that I think one of the reasons that webcomics have become better known and probably taken more seriously is actually because of Lackadaisy as well.
Yep.
Because that was a huge thing when I was in school, was people were looking at Lackadaisy and being like, have you seen the quality of the drawings in this comic? It's not like anything people had seen before in the webcomic space. I think that quality really shone through. And I think it's great that there are so many resources out there.
Oh, that's
nowadays.
heartwarming to hear. Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a huge thing because people weren't expecting something of such great quality to come out of that space, and then they were kind of just knocked backwards on their ass by it when it came out. So
Well,
I wish I
mean,
would have spoken English as a kid, so that I would have also had that in my childhood, but I did not. I saw the drawings, but I never got into it because I didn't know what was going on.
That's okay. I still get people who are like, "Oh, I love your comic. I haven't read it, but I look at all the pictures." I'm like, okay.
Well, I read it. I'm up to date.
That's
I
fair,
told
that's
you.
Fine. I'll take that. Yeah, I know. I loved your interpretation of what was happening pre-reading the comic, so that's totally fine. If people are looking at it for just the art, I am all too pleased with that too. It's there to be read or to just be looked at. That's cool. But there were lots of other comics I feel like that were visually very or that went the extra mile with their the amount of effort they were putting in and everything. So I definitely can't take full or even significant credit for that particular thing, but
yeah, there was almost like a renaissance of incredible webcomics.
Yeah.
emerged.
But I think it had a lot to do with the way comics are read and understood in other countries and manga and things like that, and the huge market for that. And then I think Webtoon is a Korean company, and they came along and kind of just made mobile comics a really big deal in English speaking areas, where as they had already been a pretty big deal overseas. So that I think had a lot to do with it. And then maybe some other things like technological changes and the prevalence of social media and everything, where images are just part of it. Imagery is just something you stumble upon in your feed on this or that platform. It just seems like a natural place for a little comic to exist, especially those extremely popular little topical 4-panel comics or 1-panel comics or things it's kind of like the newspaper of today is
true,
your social media feed, and you kind of get your comics instead of being a comic section, it's just intermingled with what you're scrolling through naturally, right? So
Yeah. I can't speak too much to advice to give to people starting out in comics, because honestly I feel just mine was just a stroke of luck, and it was just something I happened to do.
Yeah,
project.
But I hear that stroke of luck thing all the time, and it's true to a certain extent, but like to get that luck, you need to create your chance, and that is something I think that lots of people miss out on. It's like, oh, I like my comic has never been discovered. I'm like, well, did you make a comic? Well, no, it's still in my head, but I'm like do
Yeah,
it. Like, just put it
yeah.
on paper.
Right.
Like, do something
It's
with
like
it.
everybody has ideas. Everybody has an idea. It's just the follow.
Very few actually
that
put it on paper.
makes the difference. Yeah, it's and I think a lot of artists do that thing where they feel like they have to be at a certain skill level before they can start.
Exactly.
And it's like a nebulous place. It's like a place that doesn't exist, being quote unquote good enough. But the way you get good is to actually do the thing and put it out there and
would
make
teach
yourself
you the
subject to the
skills.
feedback and everything. It's
Yeah,
you know.
doing the thing is what gets you there. You don't have to get there to do the thing.
Right. You can't study your way to being really, really good at comics. Like, it doesn't matter how many, how-to books or, Scott McCloud or Eisner books or whatever you read. They're great and they're informative and you should read them, but they aren't going to teach you everything you need to know. They aren't going to make you a good comic artist unto themselves. You have to actually do it. And so I'd say to people, like, dive in and just get started doing your thing, even if you aren't showing anybody, maybe just showing your friends at first or something before you feel secure enough to like put it out there.
Start small. Don't start with
Yeah.
your dream project. Like, just make one
Right.
page, one little
Just
story
do
of something.
a test comic, like do a short, just one chapter at a time, or just like a 3-page comic or something. You don't have to start out by doing like the grand epic, like, 5-book thing that you have planned.
I like to say start
Yeah.
with something expendable that you don't really care about.
True, that too, yeah.
Because it will look like shit.
Oh yeah, it will.
But it's
But
fine because you'll be
that's-
better next time you do it.
Yeah.
Right. You will get better, yeah.
Like every page you'll get better.
Yeah.
It's same for animation too. Don't start big. Don't do it
No.
to yourself.
Yeah.
No.
Oh gosh. Yeah. When we do live streams and things, we get people coming in and they're like, "Hey, I have plans for like
A series.
feature length. I've never made an animation before, but I'm gonna make a feature length." Like, no, don't do that. Do like 30 seconds at first. Like, they're like, "I'm putting together a team. And we're gonna make a movie." And we're like, maybe do a short film first. I don't know.
Okay, I'm not a comic artist,
Absolutely
but
do it.
go for
Just
it.
Don't do it first.
No, you first.
Oh, I was just saying you can absolutely make a feature film or a series. Just don't make it the first thing that you do.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're saying. It's like, yes, you can build up to that, but maybe don't start there. I'm sure there are people out there who could pull it off, but you're going to have a bad time of it.
Yeah.
And the budget alone is going to be like, unless you are like somehow independently wealthy or you've like got
I don't
like
need a budget. I'm
enormous-
gonna do everything myself.
yeah, right, yeah. I mean, there are people who do crazy things like that. Like, I know there's one animator who's done like some incredible stuff with just like animating in Illustrator, which is just bonkers. But yeah, like, I mean, people do make incredible things, but they're often like, it's backbreaking labor. If you really are, I think just to introduce yourself to the art form and everything, start small and get your feet on the ground and understand the kind of terrain you're on first.
Okay, I'm not a comic artist, but I'm a teacher, and I like to deconstruct things so that people can learn them. Like, I'm a better teacher than an artist, meaning like I can explain how to do something to somebody talented and they're gonna nail it, but I cannot do it myself most of the time. But
Teaching is its own skill, 100%.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
yeah, it's a different skill. But I did want to make comic at one part of my life, and one thing that I would do to practice, I don't know if that's something you would recommend, but let's see. I would take a animated bit or like a movie part, and I would try to turn it into a comic, so that you don't get the idea in your way, because the idea is just there. It's just that you have to interpret it into like a set of comics and frames and like how to frame it. Yeah, because I wanted to practice how to make the layout of a comic, like using like rectangles and triangles and squares.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think that actually is really good practice. Like, I know both comic artists and storyboard artists who will like sit and watch a film and like thumbnail
Yep.
certain scenes out to understand like how the staging is working and like the camera angle and all those, like how do you establish mood with camera angle and camera motion and things like that, and how that might translate to drawing storyboards or drawing comics. It's like, yeah, that's vital to learning, I think, and probably a good idea.
Yeah.
I think I may, you know, like I didn't read a lot of comics as a kid. I watched cartoons, and like, you know, Disney and Don Bluth and all of that stuff that most kids of my generation grew up on. And I think I learned most of what I know from there. And then I tried to make a comic out of it. And I learned along the way, of course, that comic making is a different art form and has different sensibilities. And like, since then I've picked up like comic reading as more of a hobby than I ever used to have it as one before I started making comics. But yeah, I think most of what I learned was like from animated films. And I think it maybe is like one of the reasons my comic just looked a little different. I would do these things where I'd do like a series of facial expressions because I was thinking of it almost more as an animation than as a comic, and I'd have like 5 or 6 panels of just characters, like a panel zoomed in on a facial expression.
Gosh,
And like I'd have all these tiny little facial expression panels like in between larger panels.
Yeah,
because I couldn't like
just like
yeah.
over-handling so much to
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I was like taking those sensibilities and like trying to mash them into a comic shape, I think, and yeah. But it's definitely one way to learn.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great way to learn.
It's Christmas time, so it's time
Whoa.
to give back. Well, it's not. It's actually not Christmas, but it will be soon.
It's coming up fast.
No.
I was.
Oh, yeah. It's Christmas time. Time to give back. So, if you have any like artist or book that you want to recommend, you can tell me in messages. I'm gonna put it into the description so that you don't be scared of forgetting something or someone. I learned from last year. And otherwise, like for Christmas, what would be the one ultimate advice you could give to someone who wants to dive either from comic to animation or from animation to comics?
I think overall, I would give some general advice to just find a community of artists to interact with. That there's multiple reasons for doing it. One of them is mental health, because you can kind of cheerlead each other and be a sounding board and thing for like those artistic anxieties and everything that everybody struggles with.
And it kind of keeps you accountable, but like positively accountable. Because sometimes there's negative accountability, but like this is just positive. Like you have people to show your progress to.
Exactly, and they can provide some perspective that you lose if you are cloistered. Like, trust me, I've spent so many hours like just locked in my house late at night, like drawing comics, and sometimes your mind does terrible things to you when you are just like that isolated, and you lose perspective very easily, and the way to ground yourself and get that perspective back is to like talk to somebody else who is not only maybe dealing with some of those same kinds of feelings, but who can like look at your art and go, no, this is looking really good, like why are you beating yourself up about this? It's also a good way to learn from other artists, to be able to talk to them and bounce ideas off of them, and networking. Like people say networking, and I think it kind of maybe conjures an idea of like going to a convention and handing out business cards or something, but that's not really that's not useful.
That's not it.
That doesn't work.
No, networking is like getting to know people who work in your same area, because that's how you find opportunities. Like every voice actor we've hired like has known every other voice actor we've hired because they network with each other. They have a community. They know, and when they hear about an audition coming up, or like, you know, call for submissions or something, they will go and tell their voice actor friends about it. And I know like animators are the same way. They go and tell, like, they're like, hey, there's this thing that's hiring, you should submit your reel.
Come work with me.
Yeah, exactly. That's like, it's, you know, I hate to put that like it's who you know thing on it, but it is very much about like, it is that. So that's how you get jobs. That's how you learn things, and that's how you become part of a community. And it's useful to do that. It's on so many levels.
How
It's
about
not
you,
networking?
Swiftie?
It's just it's not networking. It's just making friends, right?
Yeah. Calling it networking, I guess, makes it sound soulless, but it's really making friends. Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. So it doesn't need to be like, I think a lot of people feel like with networking there needs to be an ulterior motive behind it, which is like getting your foot in the door. But really, it's just like find people you get on with that you want to make stuff with, and then have a great time doing it.
Exactly.
No.
Yes.
Oh, in terms of last piece of advice, I mean, I'd say the same thing as Tracy, which is like community is so important. And I guess if I was to add on to that, just, yeah,
Go
start
for it.
something small. Like, do something you can make within a couple of months and just get a win under your belt. Because having that win is going to give you momentum to want to do the next thing. People, are always asking, how do I motivate myself to do something? My partner and I are like trying to campaign to replace the word motivation with momentum, where instead of getting the motivation to do something, you need the momentum to do something. And the only way to get momentum is to start moving. So just make something small and have fun with it.
That works.
I like that. That's a good advice. Momentum instead of motivation, because if you've got some self-esteem like pulling you along, that goes a long way. So
yeah, little wins like pull me all the way through the week. It's great. Just I did the dishes. Yes, awesome.
I have check marks for those. They give me a boost every time I check something off.
Yeah,
and putting pens is on that list. So
yeah, everybody has a different way of doing it. Like I know some people bullet journal and things like that, but yeah, having a list where you can cross things off. Like I have reminders on my phone, and when I delete one because I've got something done, like it feels good.
yes.
Yep.
And with the start small, I think the three of us insist of it. So if you're watching this, please take fucking advice and do it. And starting small is so important because you will make mistakes and it's okay. Like I'm not an animator anymore. I say I'm not an animator anymore, but that's because I don't animate each day anymore. Like I do other work, but I used to animate every day and I would get better every day, but now it's different. So I only do small projects like the Grump thing, for example. But each time that I look back at the first project I made and before, you can see where it gets better. And these are just 10-second shots. So either if it's a comic or an animation, like just do something small and then learn from it. Like you have it, it's complete, it's great. You can, it's validating. So start with something small.
Yeah.
And share your work in progress. I think that's a piece of advice that I would give and that I give to my students. Don't keep your project hidden for like 10 years and then release it. Because like Tracy said, trying to build momentum on YouTube, if you release a project and there's no one to see it, well, no one will see it. Like,
that's why we put out animation previews. Like it's all rough animation, but it's like it draws the attention of people who enjoy animation and like, oh, this is interesting. I'll bookmark this and watch it later when it comes out. So yeah. And I mean, when I started my comic on DeviantArt, I was posting all of my early like concept drawings of the characters and everything. And people were like, this project's really interesting. And I think that had a lot to do with motivating me to carry it forward and actually, follow through on making a comic out of it. Because people were like, hey, this looks interesting and cool. Like, yeah, like gangster cat characters. I like it. So I was like, yeah, I guess maybe I should take it all the way. So it is more motivating than you might think it is to let people in on your, like, even your messy sketches sometimes.
Yeah, go and leave a nice comment on an artist piece today.
Yeah.
Yo, that's something I do every day.
Idea.
Like I have a mission to go at least on one comment or one Twitter post or one art and say something nice about it. That's like a mission I gave myself this year. And I'm really glad I did. It makes me feel better. It makes people feel better too.
We should all strive to be that supportive of other artists because we all know how hard it is,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like that's how I became friend with Iskopi. Like she does very great illustration and animation. Yeah. We just got to talk, and sometimes you just expect that people have these crazy big friend circle and that they're unapproachable, but we just became friends. And she was like, oh yeah, I would love to have people to work with, just to butt head with and just to work with. I'm like, oh well, you can just come hang out with us. And she was like, oh, that's so great. And I'm like, oh, okay. So like just take a step and make friends, people. It's great.
Yes, this animation project has gotten me in touch with so many people who I like admired from afar and was afraid to ever talk to. But like then you do like approach them and they turn out to be like a really super nice person and they're absolutely approachable. They aren't like surrounded by bodyguards or something where you can't talk to them. They're like, it's very cool. You might be surprised. Like, so yeah, reach out to people, like say hi or just comment on something. You might be surprised that they'll be like, a friendly human being.
Great advice.
Man, thank you, you two. It was amazing. I think it's one of my favorite interview I've done so far
Oh,
because it was so
thanks.
different. Like learning about stuff that I don't actually do. That's so great.
I mean, you could always join us on the dark side, Zeb, and make some comics.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
another thing to my plate. Okay, I'll make one.
Okay.
one tiny one panel
One
comic.
panel, that's all it takes.
So I'll
Yeah.
take
You're
everything
officially a
you.
comic artist.
I'll take everything you two just said, and like I think during Christmas time when I get some downtime, I'm going to do
Okay.
something small.
I look forward to seeing the results of that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you
so-
guys for having me. It's been super cool to chat with you.
Yeah. Thanks for the invite, Z. That was very cool. And
I'm
it was
really-
very
really
lovely
glad you
meeting you.
appreciate it.
It was great to meet you too. I've admired your work from afar for a really long time, so it's awesome to get in a call with you and get to say hi and chat in person.
Oh, well, thanks.
All right, so thank you so much, you two. I won't hold you up for any more time, but I really appreciate and I'm looking forward to seeing both of your projects. And Merry Christmas, Merry Crimbus, Merry Winterfest, Merry Snow. I don't know how to say it anymore.
Can't wait to see your one panel comic, Z.
One
Yeah.
panel comic? Is that even a thing?
Yeah.
That's an
Oh yeah,
illustration, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Oh
no,
no!
I mean lots
oh
of.
no! We're gonna go into the war of like, is a burger? Is a hot dog a sandwich? No, is pizza a sandwich or something? There's a little debate like that.
Granted, the distinction is a bit blurry, but yeah, I think a one-panel comic illustration, like I think as long as it conveys some kind of story or something, or makes some kind of point about something. Lots of political cartoons and stuff are like one panel.
That is true. That is true. So yeah, thank you both, and I'll see you again in another video, maybe. Woohoo!
Okay. Bye.
Bye bye.